Hi everyone, yet another video from Pathfinder Tuition. So for today's lesson, we're going to talk about the water cycle. So one of the also more difficult to understand topic, but the difficulty actually comes from another topic known as heat and temperature. Because when we talk about the water cycle, often we are actually talking about the movement of the water and water vapor, how I become water, how I become water vapor. So as a result of that, the difficulty is mainly because of that. So in today's lesson, I will talk about the water cycle as well as talking a little bit about the heat and temperature so that everyone can understand the two parts and you will be able to better understand how to answer a question well in the water cycle. So to begin the topic, we look at the water cycle itself, which mainly comprises of a couple of things, three processes. So number one is the process of evaporation. So where did the water come from? That's point number one. So the water, they are from either the water body, let's say we talk about the sea, the ocean, the rivers, and even from our body. When we breathe out, there will be water vapor, so on and so forth. So these are the sources of water. And after which, through the process of evaporation, which I'll explain a little bit more later, the water will rises up to the top because they will become the gaseous state. Okay, so this will be causing the liquid to become the gas state. Okay, so they become the gaseous state and then they go up to the top. And because high up at the top, the temperature is much lower, so the water will condense. So condensation will happen. And eventually, the cloud that was formed, not sure whether you know, the clouds are in fact water droplets. So which means to say that if you are able to see, it definitely has to be something that is already in the liquid state. Yeah, so I will actually explore that a little bit more as well in a while. And eventually, because the cloud become too heavy, the water will come down, and this process is known as the precipitation. So under the primary school syllabus, the word precipitation, you might not need to know to a large extent, but if you know, it's a good thing as well. You can use it in your examinations. But otherwise, you can also talk about it as water fall down and then it becomes rain. That is supposedly good enough. And of course, the question is, these are the various processes that's involved in the water cycle. Okay, and of course, the question will be, right, how do they happen? So just now, I briefly mentioned about words such as evaporation, condensation, as well as the formation or changing between liquid and gas. Okay, so this is the part that we will dive deeper to really understand under heat and temperature what is required in order for the state to change between liquid and gas. And eventually, at the condensation, where you get gas converted back to liquid. And at the precipitation part, okay, maybe as well the entire thing. So this is liquid. Okay, this is liquid as well. Okay, so gas to liquid will be at the condensation stage, and then eventually, when it comes back down, during precipitation, there isn't really any change of state, but really the water is coming back down from the top. Okay, so we're going to explore bit by bit how all these things happen. So the first process is called the evaporation, which is a change of state from liquid to gas at any temperature. One of the difference between this and the other process known as boiling, so you definitely have seen this before in real life. Boiling will be a process that only happens for water. Okay, water must be at its boiling point, which is 100 degrees Celsius. Okay, so for other liquid, the temperature might change, but evaporation happens at any temperature, right? It doesn't have to be 100. So long as you are standing here in the room, you probably will be evaporating water from your body and so on. But the thing that did not change will be always you need to ensure that there will be heat gain. So which is why when you are explaining how evaporation happens, okay, take note, I put a star here. Please remember to mention heat gain or heat loss. That is extremely important. And if you look at it in this diagram here, if let's say heat were to be gained, the puddle of water that is actually the blue color thing here will then start to evaporate because of the heat from the sun. So the sun actually supplies the heat, and eventually one of the things that will happen is that this puddle of water will then become like that. okay, so the length, the side-to-side distance, the length of this puddle of water will shrink because some of the water is lost from the puddle. Okay, so this is evaporation. Important thing to take note is to talk about heat gain, okay, causing water to evaporate and then they will rise up to the top. Okay, so this is evaporation. Okay, next, what are the things that can affect evaporation? Since we are talking about water rising up and then going into the surrounding, so shouldn't the surrounding be one of the factors? So in fact, yes. If you look at this diagram here, you can see that the left side is the one which we say the humidity is lower. Then the right side, the humidity is higher. I'm not too sure whether you can see that the difference between the two is really that when you have higher humidity, it means to say more water in the air. So the space available for more water to go into the air become less, because right now if I have already a lot of water in the air, before I can evaporate more water into the air, I need to get rid of them first. So which is the reason why if let's say you stay in Singapore, which the humidity is very high, you normally will find that there's already a lot of water in the air, so I can't really push more water into the air. As a result of that, humidity will actually cause the evaporation to be lower. So more water in the air, then this one will be low rate of evaporation. On the other hand, if let's say you have a day where there isn't a lot of water in the air, then there are space where the water can go into. So if I have a droplet of water here, then okay, I can come here. I can come here as well, there's space. Or maybe I go up to the top here. So there are a lot of locations where you can go to. Imagine a very crowded room or a very crowded place. You want to squeeze yourself there, you have to really try because it's really very hard. Of course, second factor, this is related to humidity. As mentioned, if there's a lot of water in the air, then very hard for me to fit another droplet of water. So this is the reason why wind becomes important. The wind does not necessarily reduce the temperature or remove heat, but the wind does one thing, which is to remove water in the air. Okay, and this water, I'm really talking about the water paper. Usually it's a paper form. So when the wind blows, all these water droplet or water paper that's in the air, they will be pushed away by the wind. And once again, back to the point, then you will create space for more water to fit into, right? So the presence of wind is important because of that. And of course, last but not least, the exposed surface area. After all, water evaporation is a process that depends on the surface, isn't it? All the water droplet that we are talking about, they will first come from the surface. So which also means to say that if I were to line up, the one with more exposed surface area will be able to escape faster as a result of they can actually be on the surface and then they can evaporate faster. So the rate of evaporation as a result, right? Okay, just in case you are confused, this low rate was for the top, right? So this one is supposed to be high evaporation, this one is low evaporation, or slower or faster. Okay, so this is the idea of how evaporation can be affected. If you understand the basic concept of removing water into the air, then basically whatever that is in the surrounding air is going to be a factor. Of course, there's more to this. We can also talk about the temperature of the water. We can also talk about the temperature of the surrounding. So these are also various factors that will affect evaporation. But the one that they commonly like to ask you in the question is really these three. Okay? So let's look at the next process, which is what happened in the sky. So when the water vapor rises up to the top because the surrounding is cold, so as a result of that, condensation will then happen, which is changing from the water vapor in the gas state to water droplet. So this is caused by the heat loss by the vapor itself. So which means to say that if let's say you already have water vapor in the air, let's say these are the water vapor, upon losing heat, the first thing that will happen is they will change state into water droplet. So this one is the vapor. Okay, this one is the vapor. This one is the liquid state. Okay, pardon my very ugly handwriting because sometimes it's a bit hard to write on the tablet itself. So paper then become liquid. And of course, then comes to the next part that they also every time like to ask, what exactly is the mist that we are seeing? So as mentioned earlier, if you can see it, it's definitely not going to be the paper, right? So when you're boiling a pot of soup or you're boiling water, the thing that you might see is that, especially if you're talking about a very cold day, there will be a lot of mist that's actually coming out from the pot. But this mist is not water paper. Okay, take note, this is not water paper. Once it turns into mist, it should be known as water droplet. Okay, water droplet. So because it has already condenses to some extent and then it's floating in the air. So you can see them as white mist. So when it becomes mist, then that should be water droplets. Okay, and in a lot of boiling process, you see the mist is really because that the hot air, okay, the air on top of the pot will be hot. So as a result of that, right, the water paper will actually be very hot. And when it comes in contact with the surface at the surrounding, which is possibly colder, then it will cause the water droplet to condense. Okay, so this is condensation. Okay, now let's look at some real life question. Okay, some questions that you get to see in the exam, or things that you see on a day-to-day basis, and how do we answer them. So imagine if the day is cold. Okay, why is it cold? Because after raining, and then after which, right, they say that, they find that there are many droplets of water, the inside of the window is generally wet. And then the question asks you, why does this happen? So this is exactly what we have been talking about a few slides ago. It's a result of what we call evaporation and condensation. But more so in this case, we are not really talking about evaporation. The thing that we are really looking at here is condensation. Okay, if ever they ask about why is there water droplet on the window, condensation. But of course the question will be, it could be talking about inside or outside. So right now, okay, in this scenario, for this question, right, is that imagine you have a window pane. This is window. Okay, this is window. So in the window, right, this is the outside. This is the inside. So on a cold day, the outside will be cold. Okay, outside will be cold. Inside, supposedly is warm because you close it up. So the air inside will be slightly warmer. Outside will be cold. And because of that, now, think about it, water droplet is forming in the inner surface inside, right? So question is why? Okay, so it definitely has something to do with the difference in the temperature, which is related to heat and temperature. So in that topic, we actually mentioned that heat is transferred from hot to cold object. So as a result of that, when you want to talk about condensation, please remember to talk about where it's cold and what is hot. Right, so that's extremely important. So now we try to answer this question. We have outside, inside. Outside is cold, inside is warmer. So inside will contain what we call warm water paper. Right, there's always water paper in the surrounding. And because of that, the warm water paper will touch the window pane, the window itself. So when the water paper starts to move towards the window, and this is what happened, they will start to lose heat to the window. Okay, let me try to use a different color for this. Yeah, hang on, sorry. Let me use blue color. So as a result of the water paper touching the surface, right, not forgetting that outside is cold, the window should be cold. And that causes heat to be passed to the water paper, from the water paper to the window itself. And this causes heat loss. So as part of the answer later, you will see there should be heat loss. So this is point number one. Number two, due to the heat loss, then we talk about the process called condensation that happens. So this water paper that is warm inside the room will touch the cold surface of the window, lose heat, and condenses into water droplet. Okay, so that is exactly what happened. Alright, if you have understood that, let me erase everything and let's look at the answer. If you are still unsure, feel free to look back at the front part, because I will say that which side is the cold, which side is the hot is important. It will affect where the water droplet is actually appearing. In this case, if outside is cold, inside is warm, the water droplet will appear inside. So it's always the warm side that will have the water droplet. If, let's say, on the other hand, outside is warm, inside is cold, then water droplet will appear on the outside instead. Alright, let me erase all this writing now. Let's take a look at the answer. So if you look at the answer next, the temperature of the window will be low since the air outside the room will be low after rain. So you might want to point out the condition first. Don't assume everybody understands what's going on. And then after that, second point will be the water vapor in the room will touch the, remember, must mention where is cold, where is warm. So the cold surface of the window, and it causes the water vapor to condense into water droplet. And last but not least, please wrap up the question by saying that, yeah, they are supposed to explain why is there water droplet. So this water droplet is actually all this condensation that has happened. Okay, I find that generally primary school students will always face this problem of having not wrapping up going back to the question. They are very fixated on talking about the different processes, then they forgot that, oh, at the end of the day, you need to answer back to the question, why is there water droplet? So please remember to go back to that. I find that that's very important. Okay, right, so this is question number 1. Let's look at the next question. The next question has to do with evaporation. Alright, so when we talk about evaporation, then the first thing that comes to our mind will be, maybe we have washed our clothes. And then the next thing is, I want to dry it. Question, should I hang it outside or should I hang it inside? Indoor or outdoor? Of course, you have seen how your mom does it, and the obvious answer is outdoor, of course. But have you ever wondered why is it outdoor? And if it's a science question, how do you then explain why is it outdoor? You cannot just say that the obvious but without able to explain. Okay, so the reason why is really because recalling the factors of evaporation, right? So we want to have evaporation so that the water can be removed from the clothes. So as a result of that, I will say that if you hang outdoor, the condition, remember, talk about the condition first. The condition will be, there will be the presence of wind as well as the surrounding temperature will be higher. Usually outdoor, we think of it as the sun is out there. Okay, so condition first. Then you talk about how this factor becomes important factor for evaporation. So because of that, right, you will have wind, there will be also higher temperature, and because of that, these are all factors that increases the rate of evaporation. Like last but not least, don't stop there, link back to the question. The question asks you, how come you can dry clothing faster in the choice, like outdoor? Yeah. So in this case, you can see that, right, because water can evaporate faster, and as a result, the clothes will be able to dry faster. So more important thing to remember is that do not always just stop at describing the processes. Please remember to come back to the question to help people to understand what exactly is the question you're trying to answer here. Okay, so go back to the question itself. Okay, that's all for today. Okay, water cycle, very simple. 2 questions, common question that you see in the exam, and a bit of recap of the different processes involved in water cycle. Of course, there's more to it, but possibly we can talk about this in our next video. Okay, in the months to come, I will still continue to shoot a few more videos so that people who are doing their PSLE, they will be able to benefit from this a lot. So I will not only talk about the question, but more importantly is that I think I need to talk about the recap of the facts, because I'm going to use this fact to support my question, to help me to answer my question. Okay, last but not least, if you like the video, please remember to subscribe and share with your friends, and that will really be very helpful in pushing us to promote actually more video for the rest of you. So there will be more to come, so I hope that you can continue to watch it. And of course, if let's say you would like to request any particular video, I think you can also just email us, right? Any particular topic that you're interested in, email us, then we will try to get the video up as far as possible. Okay, thank you very much. I will see you again in the next video.